Boy in Green. Chapter 6. The dark night covered them as they flew closer to Terranil Castle. Peter was in the lead with Tink, then the twins to Peter's side, and Zell was in the back. The Pegasus was only coming if they needed to take the princess with them. Once they were within a few feet of the castle, they touched the ground near the stables. The twins nodded to Peter, signaling they would wait there for him. Peter gave them a nod back, then he flew off with Tink tucked in his hat. They stayed close to the stone walls of the castle and made sure to keep in the shadows. Everything went well until Peter reached the window of Zelilia's room. As Peter was about to tap on the window, a fairy knight came flying by. The knight spotted Peter's shadow first and chased after it. Peter began to fly around, avoiding being seen by the knight. However, the knight had a potion with him. This particular potion could capture the shadow of an individual, so even if a thief got away, his shadow was trapped. The shadow could then be used as a way to find the thief. In this case, Peter was the thief. The knight threw the potion bottle at Peter's shadow, separating them. For Peter, it felt a bit strange, like a part of him was ripped out. Tink commanded Peter to keep flying away. Up in her room, Zelilia heard the knight's potion break. She rushed out of her bed and cracked open her window to see what was happening. When she saw the knight holding a thrashing shadow, she held back her pleasure. "What is that?" she asked innocently. "The shadow of an intruder. He was snooping by your window, my lady." There was a sudden updrift of wind, caused by Peter, who hid at the very top of the tower where Zelilia's room was located. The knight's grip on the shadow was loosened and the shadow zoomed around about to reveal Peter's hiding spot. The knight tried to follow it, but that's when the twins came flying around. The knight's focus turned to them as Peter's shadow zoomed into Zelilia's room through her window. The princess quickly grabbed the shadow before it could go anywhere else. Then, from behind her, she heard her window shut. She smiled, knowing who she would find when she turned around. "I've been waiting for you to return. Have you figured out your destiny yet? The fact that I have your shadow in my hand tells me I was right about you after all." Zelilia peeked over her shoulder, then faced Peter. She smiled as he stared at her, then she ran to him and hugged him, letting his shadow run rampant throughout the room. Tink, from inside Peter's hat, came out to get between them. Though the notion was meant to be rude, Zelilia smiled brightly at Tink. "What a pretty companion you have there, Peter." Peter looked over at Tink, who was fuming with fury. He laughed. "Her name is Tinker Bell, but I like calling her Tink." "Oh, Tink is it? That's a lovely name." Tink folded her arms and huffed. There was no way this princess could fool her. Tink knew the truth. This girl made Peter hurt inside. For all Tink knew, Zelilia broke Peter's youthful heart that wasn't meant to be broken even when he got older. Peter's shadow flew past. They all looked at it as it tried to escape. Peter then started to chase it around the room until he ended up flying around just like the shadow. As he tried to get it, he knocked over a chair and a table. Zelilia cringed as a delicate vase hit the floor. If he made any more noise, someone might come to check on her. "Oh Peter, please be quiet," she whispered to him as she set the chair and table back up. She would deal with the vase later. "Got it," he exclaimed, lifting the shadow confidently as he hovered in the air. Zelilia smiled at his excitement, then she said, "Come down here, so I can put your shadow back." Peter floated down until he sat down on her soft cloud bed. She knelt down on the floor and took the shadow from him, then she lifted up one of his feet so she could see the bottom of his shoe. After that, she took the part of the shadow that corresponded with the shoe and rubbed them together. She did the same for the other shoe. "There, I think that should work," she said as she hopped on the bed next to him. While she did, her bedroom door swung open and two boys came running in, scaring all of them half to death. "Peter Pan! Peter Pan, they both shouted as they jumped onto the bed. Zalilia laughed and calmed the youngest boy down. Michael, calm yourself. Same to you, John. We need to be quiet. Peter stared at the boys closely and noticed they were the same Michael and John from Sir Don's place. They must have been sent to the castle together. Peter knew Sir Don wouldn't split them up like that. Wow, I haven't seen you two in a long time, Peter said with a smile. We've heard all kinds of stories about you from Zalilia, John said, about what you're going to do and have done. Zalilia pressed a finger to her lips. You must speak softly. She turned to Peter. Now, what is the reason you came here? I need to know where to find the son of the sky, Peter told her. Do you know what that is? I do, but I would have to come with you. Legends say the only people who can uncover the stone are members of the royal family. It won't be an easy task to take on, but it must be done, am I correct? Yes, without its power, the tree will die, Peter explained. Zalilia stood from her bed and headed to her closet. From it, she pulled out the same cloak she wore when they first met. I shall go with you, but in order to keep my identity hidden, you must call me Wendy. Tink was enraged and tried yanking the cloak off Zalilia. The pixie didn't sign up for this. She thought they were here to talk to the princess, not take her with them. Besides, she would probably have them go on a wild goose chase anyway. Peter took off his hat and scooped Tink in it. He wagged his stern finger at her. Now Tink, she's my friend and she's helping us. Be nice. Then with Tink still in it, he put his hat back on. Zalilia smiled. It's all right. I take no offense to her attitude toward me. I know how she feels. Peter blushed. Then Zalilia took a paper out and with a quill, she wrote a message to her father. This way it wasn't like she got kidnapped. Her father would still send out parties to search for her, but at least he'd know she was in her own hands. Plus she didn't want to grow up just yet and get married anyway. Let's go, she said as she set the paper on her bed. She turned to John and Michael, not knowing what to say to them. Peter fixed this as he said, they can come with us. I brought my Pegasus in case something like this happened. But for now. With a simple thought, Peter created a wind that could pick all four of them up. He blew the window open. He outstretched his hand to Zalilia. Her bright smile grew bigger as she took his hand. After that, she took John's, and he held Michael's. Together, the group flew out of the window, avoiding guards. They found the twins hiding out in the stables with Zell. The twins both bowed to Zalilia as the group landed on their feet. She greeted them respectfully. After that, Peter helped John and Michael up on Zell the Pegasus. He turned to Zalilia and offered her his hand again. Tink crawled her way out of Peter's hat and got between their hands. Zalilia chuckled, putting a hand in front of her mouth. All right, I'll ride on this beautiful Pegasus instead. What is her name, Peter? Peter turned red as he looked off to the side. Zell. Yes? No, the Pegasus's name is Zell, Peter corrected slowly, looking over at her. She laughed, thinking it was cute. Then, to make things easier, I suppose we should start calling me Wendy. She hopped aboard Peter's Pegasus with John and Michael. The twins flew out of the stables, then Zell, the Pegasus flew out next, and then Peter and Tink followed behind. They made sure to be quick in getting back to the tree. From there, they would find out what was known about the sun in the sky. Around 3 in the morning, they made it to where the other boys were with Evan. Most of them were sleeping, but they soon woke up upon hearing them arrive. Zalilia, John, and Michael were shocked at how well Peter seemed to be getting along with Slightly and Nibs. Toodles started a fire as everyone else sat around Zalilia as she explained what she knew about the sun in the sky. I know it is rumored to be located in several places. Nothing is solid on where it actually is, but it should be easy to find since the locations are very specific. All besides one, but I seriously doubt that it would be there. Well, what are the places? Nibs asked. Cecilia looked at Peter. Do you still have that map I gave you? Peter pulled it out of his pocket and handed it to her. She took it while thanking him. Then she carefully flattened it out. She pointed to a medium duck-shaped island, which was called the Flying Duck. At the very edge of what people call the island's bill, they say you can see a glowing stone off in the distance at night. Many have tried flying to it but got lost in the thick clouds. Apparently, it rains constantly in that direction. She gestured to another island, the same one they were on now with the great pixie tree. Then others say it might be here, but it isn't likely since the tree could easily sense its presence. Is there another place it's rumored to be? 'Cause I don't like our odds of finding it in thick clouds where people vanish, Curly asked her, looking pale. Slightly pounded on the boy a bit. Shut it, Curly, you're not even going anywhere. That will be Peter, the princess, and Tink. But are there any other places it could be? Yes, and this is the one I seriously doubt is truthful. Have any of you heard of the prison in Terranil? Toodle's mouth dropped open. You mean the island with bleeding mousens? And how the kingdoms drop off criminals there with no way of escape? Cecilia nodded. That would be the one. They named it Dark Island. The only reason that the Son of the Sky might be there is that it hasn't been searched due to the bleeding mousens. Toodles glanced at Curly and asked, maybe you would like to search that one instead? Curly gulped and waved his hands. No, I'm fine here. I can search with the rest of you, all right. Cecilia closed the map and gave it back to Peter. She stretched her arms and yawned. I don't suppose we could take a nap beforehand, right? Nibs scanned around the dead forest, and he bit his lip. There was nowhere fitting for a princess to sleep. He knew from his training and past mistakes to respect the royal family. I don't think there's anywhere comfortable to sleep, my lady. Wendy, she said. Oh, yes, Wendy. She laughed to herself, then she said, you're wrong about that, Nibs. Isn't that right, Tink? Tink huffed while crossing her arms and facing away from Cecilia. She still wasn't giving in to the girl's sweet and caring act. The princess was a heart-crusher. Besides, Tink was the one that helped Peter find the first 2 stones, not her. Tink also didn't like how Cecilia acted like she was all-knowing. Peter, can I see that harp I gave you? She blushed. I'm sorry for suddenly requesting both the map and the harp. Peter smiled as he turned pink as well. No, no. It's fine. You gave them to me. He marched to his things and brought out the harp. She smiled as she grabbed it from him. Everyone followed her to the front of the tree where the rest of the pixies buzzed around. She strummed the strings and then she sang a song. It sounded familiar to Peter, then his memory recalled the sound of a woman's voice singing him to sleep. It must have been his mom. The song was a popular lullaby fairies sang. The sun greets the moon. The moon greets it back. Adjoined by the stars. Lost in the past. Here you are safe. Forever be blessed. The light and the dark. Seek refuge at last. When you reach the end. And shadows you meet. The sun paves the road. For the lost and outcast. Suddenly, the tree's trunk expanded and a doorway was opened. The group stared at the new opening in awe. It was big enough that they all could go inside. No one their size had ever been in the tree aside from a few people, and most of them were dead. The pixies, of course, always went inside the tree to collect magic, so it wasn't as cool for Tink as it was for everyone else. Slowly, Peter walked forward and went inside the tree. One after the other, they followed him inside. What they found was more beautiful than the outside, but they could still spot some decaying parts. Inside, they could feel the magic all around them. It wasn't exactly visible, but they caught glimpses of the magic more than they could outside the tree. They identified the magic by the different colors floating around. It was like seeing the wind have a slight tint to it. Also in the tree were soft green mossy patches and all sorts of flowers lining the walls of the tree. And the light inside the tree was from the dancing pixies. In the middle was a small spring of fresh sparkling water. Michael fell on a patch of moss and shut his eyes right away like it was a bed. Zalilia smiled at the boy's continuous cuteness. He was like her little brother ever since he and John got to the castle. John dropped next to him and went fast asleep too. Zalilia plucked a feather from out of his hair. When she looked at the other boys, she saw they were staring at her strangely. Yes, what is it? All of them were still thinking about the song she sang. Each of them had memories of their mother singing them that same song Zalilia sang to wake the tree. Curly started to cry, then he ran to Zalilia and hugged her. You're just like my mom. You should be the lost boy's mother. Slightly yanked Curly off Zalilia. Get a grip. After she helps Peter, she's got to go back to the castle. She doesn't have time to tuck us in, besides, she's the same age as us. Zalilia interrupted, actually, I don't want to go back. I would rather stay as Wendy for the rest of my life. She found a spot to sit and began to play the harp again. The boys gathered around her to listen. One by one, they fell asleep until it was just Peter and Zalilia awake. Peter smiled at the sleeping Tink and Evan. They looked so peaceful. Zalilia's music stopped and he noticed she finally fell asleep too. Peter took the harp from her and set it to the side. Then he pulled her cloak's hood up so her head would keep warm through the rest of the night. She appeared the most peaceful out of all of them. His eyes closed and her face was the last thing he saw before he went to sleep.